Thanks. So first of all, I wrote a book about this boring subject a number of years ago, and as you can see, it's a firefighting job to fix IT projects, and I've been involved in fixing a rather large number of projects gone wrong. So what I want to try today is to present a few of my observations and then share a few tricks, and then leave the word open for you to share your tricks, what to do when in trouble, because there are lots of shortcuts and ideas to share, I'm sure. So I'll just share my screen. Did that work?
Yes, not a cheat sheet, but close.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just jump into it. And I think you probably know all the items on the list, so I'll spend my time explaining the items, not reading them aloud. But a lot of time you get into a project with half-done specifications, and nobody has the time to answer to all of your questions. So that means that a lot of pitfalls, they are simply left open and it will hit you later. And that links to the lack of clear objectives. So in one project, I asked the project manager, what is the key objective here? And the project manager, she had a top 20 list and said, once we have finished the top 12 tasks, we are going to ship. And then I asked the customer, what's important to you? And he said he didn't care at all about the top 20 list or the top 12 list. What he wanted was to be able to ship this, roll it out in 300 locations in 20 countries and never get a phone call. So if you ask around, you'll find out that objectives are quite often different, which means that they are definitely not clear. And you know that if you plan everything in a nice Gantt chart, it looks convincing, and you can always do more planning. But the problem with the over-detailed planning is that you are playing a kind of planning shuffle game every week. And there's simply a limit to how much you can plan in a project, and you need to organize for the chaos in the project and not try to deliver a nice and convincing project plan to the management. Which leads to the next issues, because quite often the management team, they don't have time to participate. And that's actually a big red flag, because if you cannot get the customers or the managers or the top level to be involved in the process, what needs to be done is that they hand off all decision-making and responsibility and trust the people that work for them. And either you need to have top management involvement, or you need to have a product owner in the project with a clear mandate that cannot be revoked by anyone. And this is, in my opinion, one of the worst issues to deal with, because we are all service-minded to some degree. So if we're in a situation where the manager says, I'll do my best to stay in touch, but never shows up at the meetings, what should you do then? Should you cancel the project? It's a tough decision, and quite often the service-minded behavior wins, and that means that the project is actually losing. So this is a big red flag if shareholders or stakeholders, if they can't be enough involved. And sometimes you just meet up with people with unrealistic expectations. We have this project, and we have this budget, and the two issues, they don't align. I'll share a project I was involved into with you. I was asked by a company with about 500 people in the staff, highly paid people in the financial sector. They wanted to build a website and an intranet. They had less than $100,000 on the budget for both projects. And I asked them, what is the price of a company car? And how many do you have? So we found out that it was actually equivalent of like 1 out of 300 company cars that they had put on the budget for this project. And they said, strategically, this is the most important project that we have in the company. But they definitely did not have the biggest budget for it. So there needs to be an alignment, what you expect from a project and what you put into it. And let's get back to the ineffective project manager. If you're a grumpy project realist, then you're probably doing the project the biggest favor, because if you try to stretch yourself or stretch your team, then at the end of the day, something is going to break. So ineffective project management is very much about that you're actually trying to accomplish something that is not realistic. And instead, you should just tell everyone this can't be done and it's not going to happen on my shift. So we are almost there now. You know that features, they tend to creep, and the most dangerous people in your project, quite often someone from sales or marketing or management, and they probably read a magazine or they've read something online, and now they come into the meeting room and they feel that their task is to deliver 7 new ideas at every meeting they participate in. So what I usually do is I set a deadline that I call this is the feature deadline. So there's a deadline where we're not going to put any more features into the project. And then we have another deadline where we are not going to start coding more features. And then we also have a deadline for now we're not going to fix more bugs. And then what we do in order to keep the deadline is that we take features out if they are not complete. And then the management, they'll have to live with it, or they have to extend the deadline. It's their decision. And pushing decisions like this to management is actually quite effective, because as a project manager or someone highly involved in the project, you cannot take responsibility for everything. And management, they control the expectations and they control the budget. And innovation is actually risky, and sometimes the risk wins. So when you start a new project, you have to estimate the innovation risk at first, and you have to communicate that to the management team that there's actually a risk here, and we need to mitigate the risk as much as we can. But no matter how much we do, it will always be there, and we cannot win every time. And this is a tough challenge to face, because a lot of people, they hope that every project they do will be a winning project, but it's not going to be so. I've been working with software development about 25 years, a bit more actually. And I've learned that if you have one QA for every 4 developers, you're stretched out. But what I see in projects is not one for every 3 developers, but more one QA for every 10 or 20 developers. And imagine that you're that QA person that you need to test the work of 10 developers. Every day you have to work 10 times as fast as the other guys. And there's simply a limit to how much quality you can squeeze into the product development if you are so busy. So quite often, if you want to speed up development of a project, you should hire more QA people and less developers. And the last part is, of course, the most difficult, because everyone wants change, but they don't want to change themselves. And that's why you can't change people, but you can change people. Okay, so that's the introduction, and I have a few tricks for you. I have 3 tricks, and then we can talk. So one is, you're curious to learn about what's the actual state of your project. So you ask 5 people. It could be one in support, it could be a programmer, it could be the project manager, it could be the scrum master, it could be the guy in sales, it could be someone from the service desk, whatever. It takes 15 minutes. Ask them for, can we have lunch together? And then you ask them, what do you think about the product? When will it be delivered? Do you think it will be on time? Do you think the quality will be good enough? What is actually quality? What is quality for you? What is the success criteria for the project? And then listen. Just throw it out there and see what happens. And you have 3 different outcomes here. You can either have that all 5 people that you talk to, they are positive. In that case, you are likely to have a good project. You can also have that they're all 5 negative. Okay, so then it's kind of shit, and then you have to deal with it. But you can also be in the situation that you actually get 5 different opinions. That's the worst outcome, because it means that everything is panic under the surface. If everyone disagrees about the state of the project, you're in serious trouble. And this is really interesting because it doesn't take that you look into the code. It is just having lunch with 5 different people, 15 minutes per person. And this is one of the biggest tricks that you can have in your bag. This is just so cool, and you can learn from them. You can ask, so who do you think should be in charge of whatever task there is? And you can ask them, are there anything that we haven't thought about? And what happens when we will ship this to customers? And you get lots of good ideas, and then you can align that with the project plan. So that's one trick. Another is you simply ask for a test report. And if you are agile, then there'll be a test report for every sprint. If it's not agile, if it's waterfall, then you probably also have some kind of test report. If it's continuous delivery, then it's more difficult because it will probably be test reports per feature. Quite often you'll find out that nobody did a test report. The test team, they were so busy that they were testing features, but it didn't document anything. But if you get a test report, you can try to backtrack the test cases that you have and compare them with the actual specifications. And quite often you will find out that there's no connection between what's being tested and the use case that was actually put into the specifications at first. So this can be really scary to look into, but it's also really good. And it will tell you how much that you need to add to the quality of the product development. And then the last trick is super simple. You simply ask, should we go out and have a party? The Friday evening after release, would that be a great day? And then the most experienced developers in the team, they'll probably say, I think we should have this a month later. And then you know it's not going to meet the deadline.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay, share your tricks.
So yes, tips, tricks. Let's go with more tricks. Jonathan, would you mind starting?
Thanks,
I see
James.
you have a cat there too, and Martin has a cat next to him as well. Look at that, there's a cat there. I do. I just know to go let her in. She cries to come in if I don't let her into my office. Thank you, Martin. It was really interesting over there. I missed one key thing. I wrote a couple of points down, by the way. You talked about a feature deadline, a bug fix deadline, and there was another deadline you mentioned.
Yeah, that's the code freeze. So we call it feature freeze, code freeze, and bug freeze. Yeah.
Cool. I'll write that down when I'm done here. I guess the thing that we've tried to do at NetConstruct and Statement, where I work, is set the expectations as early as possible that change either costs time or money. So the tiniest thing a customer asks for at the earliest possible point will say, yeah, that's absolutely fine, that'll cost £100. Just to sort of set the mindset straight away that if you start changing stuff, you start changing stuff. So that's one thing we've learned that we do that I think we found very, very helpful. If you have many more, it can be your turn again later, Jonathan, but that's good. You're off the hook for now. I don't see like a ton of raised hands. I can keep doing what I did to Jonathan and call out people. Anybody else wants to volunteer, or are you all just going to be voluntold?
I can. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question and a point to make. We know that change management is, very important in any project, of course. And setting expectations that any change would cost money, I agree. But how do you do that in an environment where it's an agile and change is embraced, as opposed to waterfall, where project plans are all set and dependencies are all linked, and we're protective of our plan, and any change is like, no, don't change, it's going to cost you time and money?
I'm doing this in different ways depending on the project that I'm in. In some projects, we have a fixed deadline like every second week, and then we do sprint planning before, and then we have a product owner who's going to approve the sprint plan. But in order to approve the sprint plan, I insist that he actually understands what's in the sprint, or if she does. So I actually spent an hour or two going through every little bit of detail in that 2-week plan. I think that if we're going to have a team of developers working for 2 hours, for 2 weeks, he can also, or she can also spend 1 hour going through all the details. And then every time there's a new request for a big feature, I always ask, will this actually change the priority? Or will it not change the priority, so we put it at the end of whatever releases that we have planned already? So I think that approach really works. And I think that as a Scrum Master or a project manager, the best thing you can do for your team is to create quiet working conditions in the sprint. So if you have a 2-week sprint, no matter what comes up, is going to be put to the next sprint and not into this, because Agile is not chaos.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, very good. Let's jump to another Crumpy project realist. Is that you, Olivia?
I hope so. I just wanted to give you a little anecdote of what happened to me this year. I wrote a Happy New Year's email to a very dear friend, and I was like looking for what kind of conference should I go and where should I improve myself and stuff like that. And then he actually said something like, I can't recommend you any conference. So that's a different topic. But he said something, since 20 years, we're doing digitalization projects. And it's not about the technology. It's not about things that you can reach. It's actually about people taking decisions. And please consider, and this is, I like the one sentence that you had, change people, because otherwise, if people don't change people. I think that is quite an interesting way. I mean, to come to a decision, to actually find people that are also thereful enough to actually change things, you know, in projects. And that, you know, there's industries that are where I've seen projects where actually change only happens through confrontation, through escalation, through hierarchy, through this kind of things. And I must say that those companies, they should all die. I mean, basically because nobody wants to work with them. The only thing that they have is like actually they're able to set up a process or a product that lasts for 25 years or how long it takes. And they don't need digitalization. They just, that's like playing around. So what I wanted to reflect on this one phrase. So that gave that effect into my thoughts. So let's hope that people are also willing to change themselves, right, through such projects.
Oh yeah, and the reason I included that sentence is actually because what you see in some development teams is that you have one developer that's really a great developer, perhaps more brilliant than anyone else, and then sometimes it happens that this developer feels like a prima donna, and the problem is that what we do is teamwork. So let's say that Janus, he's immensely rich. He'll buy the Arsenal Football Club, and then he'll put one of his sons on the team because now he's the owner. What will happen is that the other players on the team, they'll actually leave the club because they don't want to play with Jens' son. Nothing wrong with the son, but he's just not good enough. You don't want to have one on the team who just screw everything up for everyone. So if you have a team where you have one who's kind of feeling privileged, then if you cannot change that person, you'll have to change the person, because otherwise the other people on the team, they'll either expect the same prima donna privileges or they'll leave. So sometimes you're in a situation where you actually have to make a decision. So if people they won't change and become team players, then you have to replace them. But only in that case, because otherwise, I mean, we all make mistakes and write bad code and make wrong decisions, and that's fine. But people, they should be a team.
Very good, thank you. How about somebody else wants to jump in? New tricks, more anecdotes, Q&A? Anybody else? There, I have one thing from when we had this conversation to plan this, Martin.
Yeah.
And that was, this famous number 10, this famous thing that you said that I think everybody in this call have heard 100 times, perhaps already this year, and that is resistance is hard, or people are against people have this resistance to change. And one of our other Copenhagen moderators, he said that he never really believed in that. I don't know if you remember that thread, and he said he didn't really buy this resistance to change, but what he felt was that people, irrespective of age or how digital they were insecure about new things. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, Martin?
I think it depends a lot on personality types, and I spend quite some time in projects getting to know everyone that I work with on a personal level, because even we have 5 or 10 programmers in the team, or we have 15 QA staff members, they're different people, they're different persons. They have different ways that they want to be communicated with, and they have different ways of understanding. So if you want to be managing a project, you need to understand the people. And that also means that if someone is insecure, then you should take the time to actually talk to that person and make them understand why there's a need for a change. And if you can involve people in the team and you can get their ideas onto the table, and you can have them promote how the project can be more fun and better for everyone, that's the best you can do. And if you work cross-cultural, then it's a bigger issue. I currently work with teams in Asia and in Eastern Europe and in the US. And in Asia, in some countries, there's a tendency to that you do what you're told to do. And if your boss tells you something, even better, you'll still do what you're told to do. And changing that culture is better for everyone, but it just takes more time.
Mm-hmm. Good. So I put down as a trick relationships as one of your tricks.
Treat everyone friendly and be their best friend and be their best ambassador and help them. That's really important.
Very good. I'll keep quizzing you, Martin. Denmark, as a few of you might know, but Denmark for the first time now has a minister who's in charge of digitalization. And at the beginning of the year, a month or so ago, she was cornered by some journalists who kept asking her, why does these mega projects always go over time and over budget? And her answer was that perhaps the people on the project should do better planning. They should perhaps be more thorough. What's your response to that, Martin? Is that also what you would have said?
I think that the Danish government should have been doing better in planning the pandemic, probably a few years before it happened.
That's a dangerous road to go down in terms of your answer, but are you in fan of plans that don't change?
No, I'm totally in fan of adaptation, but quite often you see people that are not involved in high-tech projects and complicated product management, that they kind of have simplistic approach saying, well, you should have done better planning, but some things you can't plan for. And I think that if we should equally blame the government, they should have foreseen that there would be a pandemic.
I keep steering you away from the pandemic. But yeah, you're right. I think many projects, not just in government, have this perhaps senior executive who, how come these projects don't go on time and as expected? And you should just plan a little bit better and, create more detailed plans. And
you should make a pilot project, and then you should use the scope from the pilot project and the output to make a stage 1. And then at the end of stage 1, you should plan for stage 2 based on what you have learned.
So is that your recommendation, is pilot projects?
Yeah, and divide bigger projects into smaller. And that also means that you can take the output of a stage and then you can go to another partner, a vendor, and then you can work with that other partner or vendor in the second stage. If, like, let's say my team did a bad job delivering the first stage, then well, you can just quit the corporation at the end of stage 1 and you can move on with another team. And if you add that into the contract, then you're free to go.
All right, very good. Pilot projects. So I'm going to give you a yes and no to finish from my side, okay? This is a statement and you can just say yes or no. Would you agree with the statement that most organizations are suffering from a project overload, like too many project congestion, too many projects at once?
Yes.
All right. Anybody here on this call that would disagree or say no? Because I would think that also connects to projects that hurt, you know, that there's just too many.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make make one final remark. Actually, it's about learning, right? And I think what many organizations don't do is they don't invest into learning. I think they think, well, there's those well-educated, specialized roles in our organization. We trust the experts. And I bought one day a T-shirt that was printed on "Don't trust the experts." I think it's about everyone has to. Well, that's a like very dogmatic thing that I'm saying now, but it's you have to like to learn, right? You have to like to improve, and if that is the state of mind, I think everything can be tackled, and it's not about yeah, well, I was right, you were wrong. It's more actually, well, we took a bet and you won that bet, and the next bet is maybe different then. That's what I have gotten out of your talk today, Martin. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Either you win or you learn, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very good. Any closing comments from your side, Martin?
No, thanks for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us alongside your cat, very well-behaved cat. Thank you everybody for finding the time, half an hour. I hope you also learned something new. Thank you, Martin. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.